everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneur Edge. Our mission is to empower small business owners to set us all up for success by sharing insider tips and tricks geared specifically for entrepreneurs. If you enjoy what you hear today and would like to be invited to our future discussions, please don't be shy to let us know and we'll keep you in the loop. Today, we're going to have Shlomo Denburg lead a talk about strategic budgeting unveiled, tailoring our tactics to support business goals specifically. I am branding and marketing strategist, and for the last 16 years, I've worked with over 100 brands. I have a passion for working with entrepreneurs and engaging the small business community to help everyone benefit from business tricks and brand strategy. I'm excited to be here today with Shlomo Denburg of Sapphire Accounting and Charlie Comparetto of J. Galt. Shlomo is a CPA and one of the owners of Sapphire Accounting. They offer fractional CFO and bookkeeping services designed to boost profitability for business owners so you can spend more time with loved ones. Shlomo and his business partner, each had their own firms before starting Sapphire and decided to team up to offer more services to clients. They specialize in helping business owners gain a more thorough understanding of financials so that they can make empowered decisions and the financials can tell them which way to go. Here with us today is Charlie Comparetto. Charlie is managing partner at J. Galt, which encompasses the business credit building finance suite, his J. Galt coastal consulting practice, as well as J. Galt Capital. J. Galt helps small businesses and medium-sized businesses access and leverage capital on their EIN using personal guarantees, which is a real problem for most mainstream business owners. Charlie's worked with finance for over 30 years in the capital markets as a trader and broker in the institutional side, but is also a small business owner himself. We are so glad that y'all have joined us for this talk tonight. If you have any questions during our talk, please send me a private message and we'll pick a few questions to fold into the conversation as we go along. Without further ado, I'll let Shlomo get things started.
Thank you, Alicia. Wow, what an introduction. One of the better ones I've had in a while, so much appreciated there. It's great to see everyone. Thank you, and I'm sure as stragglers come in, we'll tell them it's their loss that they missed out on my introduction and Alicia's introduction, but thank you all for coming. I know it's almost the holidays, and for any of you to be here at 8 o'clock at night right before is, honestly, we're honored to be part of this, and we're honored that you're giving us a chance to show you what we know and hopefully enable you to benefit something from this webinar and take some tips going forward. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. And like Alicia said, any questions along the way, chat her, and she will try to make sure something is clarified if there are any questions. Let me share my screen and let's go forward. Okay, so today we're going to be talking, like Alicia said, on the concept of strategic budgeting for your businesses. So exploring the types of budgets for every business. Okay. Budgeting helps with effective financial management, and that starts with understanding your business needs. Today, we're going to explore the few different budget types, considering both their benefits for you and the potential downsides. Budgets are the foundation of financial success. Budgets serve as a strategic financial roadmap, they guiding businesses all over to allocate their resources wisely, plan ahead for the future, and navigate your economic uncertainties. Budgeting is important for various reasons, but just to name a few, it ensures your resource availability. The main point of budgeting, and at its core, the primary function is to ensure that your organization has enough resources to meet its goals. By planning your financials in advance, you can determine which teams and which initiatives require more resources and which areas you can cut back on. For instance, if your team wants to hire an additional employee to help you scale, budgeting for that in advance can allow you to plan other spending for your rest of the year. It can help set and report on internal goals. Most people assume budgeting is all about allocating my spend, but a huge aspect of budgeting is determining how much revenue is needed to reach your company goals. So, for example, if someone is throwing an event and they know that event is going to cost you $10,000, you want to know how much to charge per person. So depending on how many people you're expecting, that's how you determine your cover charge. So budgeting as a whole, we're talking about as a business all over, but it depends on so many aspects and is part of so many areas of your business. It will help you prioritize your projects, A byproduct of the budgeting process is that it requires prioritizing projects and initiatives. When you sit down and go through it, you realize, okay, if I'm actually putting money over here, then that's taking away money from my other projects. So when you're prioritizing, consider the potential ROI for each project, the potential return on investment for each project, how each one aligns with your company's values and goals, and to the extent they can impact your broader financial goals. It also provides a pivotable plan. A budget is a financial roadmap for the upcoming period. If all goes according to plan, you will know how much you earned and spent on specific items. Now, a common question I've got is, why should I focus on budgeting? I've never kept it till now. So it's important to have a budget because, while you may not have used it in the past, by having one and sharing it with your team, you will have others hold you accountable. You will have others have you explain why haven't you held to the goal. You said we would have certain resources. It helps you set goals. And surprisingly, it could help you with peace of mind because you know in advance where your money is going to be spent and you're not going to have any surprises coming up your way. So, okay.
And
This
Shlomo,
budget,
are these overall budgets for the entire business, or would you also be able to apply these to project-based items as well?
great question. So overall, these are budgeting types for your business. However, some of these are definitely more applicable to also work for certain projects along the way. But as a whole, we're talking about the business budgeting type. It could be that, and we're going to discuss that soon, the concept of hybrids. You can have one for overall and then decide for specific projects you want to go just for a different approach. And that is totally okay. So budgeting types that we're going to talk about, there's various forms, each tailored to different business needs. Today, we're going to explore 5 of them. 1, zero-based budgeting, incremental budgeting, activity-based budgeting, rolling budgets, and flexible budgets. If you haven't heard of any before that, that's fine. That's what we're here for. And hopefully along the way, you'll learn all of them and see which one talks to you and hopefully implement that. So like I said to Alicia right in the beginning, don't feel pressured to stick to single budget type. Hybrid approaches, which are combining elements from multiple budgets, not usually, but can really work well for your business. It is slightly more complicated at times, but that's okay. And that's why if you have the help along the way, it could be a very good tailored solution for you.
Awesome. And, Charlie, I know you do a lot of foundational financial work too with the companies that you work with. Maybe it's an obvious question, but do you also find that budgeting is like really important as a ground level thing to have established?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, any business having a proper budget, whatever your business is a key factor. I deal mostly with the J Galt arm here with building business credit, and that's another foundational piece. But they go hand in hand. Having being able to have a budget to make dreams and plans, but then be able to afford it and to make a proper pathway forward to the future are a key components for the foundation for any business.
Couldn't have said it better, and amazing. It's good that you see it in very different business aspects as well. So let's dive right into it. The first budget type we're going to talk about is zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting involves starting each budgeting cycle from scratch, requiring justification for every expense. This may be the budgeting type you know best, because when people say budget, they think, okay, let me think of everything. So it's usually employed in situations where you want to really evaluate every expense, whether it's needed or not. It could be in periods of organizational change, cost-cutting initiatives, or strategic shifts. It will be typically applied in the annual budgeting process, or, like I said, during major organizational changes requiring a comprehensive reevaluation of expenses. The biggest reason, as you can see, just as I'm saying it, is you can see the time intensity and the amount of work this entails. But the goal is it encourages cost-conscious decision-making, identifying inefficiencies, and ensuring that your resources are allocated based on current needs rather than your historical spending patterns. So examples of people who've used it or can use it: retail. Retailers may use zero-based budgeting to reassess their expenses and adapt to changing consumer behaviors and market trends. Now, while I'm giving examples of industries, you may notice along the way, that, wait, this could also apply to me, and Shlomo didn't mention that. That's fine. I'm giving examples, but you'll notice a lot of budgets can be used in a lot of different areas. Another example would be healthcare. Healthcare organizations might employ zero-based budgeting to control costs while maintaining or improving their patient care. And a case study, so case studies, you'll notice all of them will have fake names, as obviously protecting anonymity, but the idea is there. Of XYZ marketing agency implemented zero-based budgeting. It led them to cost savings. However, the downside for them was the time-intensive nature of justifying every expense, which could cause temporary disruptions in workflow. For them, it did. And for your business, you have to decide, is this worth it to me? Because obviously, and I'm going to go through the ways of each one while it has its cons, there are also ways of working with it to hopefully adapt and make it work for you. But it's important to know what you're getting yourself into. So the biggest thing to do when implementing zero-based budgeting is involving team members from different departments. Encourage them to scrutinize the expenses and find innovative ways to optimize your resources. By collaborating together, it often will lead to more accurate budgeting. Now, I'm going to say this by a lot of the budgeting types, the idea of collaboration. Teamwork is so important, but what's so good about zero-based budgeting when you involve is let them take the lead. Maybe they'll have ideas that you didn't think of, and it's always helpful to hear from your team and see how they can help you. They might actually surprise you. The next type, yeah, sorry, go.
All right, we have a question from the crew, and I know that the first type of budget is maybe the one that we all think of when we think of a budget. However, I think this person is wondering if we could take a step back and define what exactly is a business budget, because on a personal basis, we're all like, okay, we have like a grocery budget of $200, but in a business setting, what does that encompass in terms of, are we dividing it by departments, or does the leadership team make a separate budget from someone else, and who is making this budget? How all encompassing are we talking here?
Great question. And whoever asked it, I applaud you. Obviously, awesome. So zero-based budgeting, and I know I'm going to talk about budgeting as a whole, but that one is much more on a business as a whole concept, whereas every department theoretically should have a budget. And every business should have a budget as a whole. Now, the person who I would say is in charge of making the budget is the CFO or the controller of your business, or as most of us who are self-employed, it comes down to the owners who have to end up doing everything. Us entrepreneurs end up doing all the work ourselves. So the best person would be involved is your CFO or controller. Now, I would say it's the CEO's obligation, if there's a separation, to make sure that this happens and to make sure that everyone understands the importance of the budget. Because to talk about it in theory is a beautiful thing, but budgeting as a business is understanding how am I going to allocate my resources and where am I going to make my money in each department, and how does each department intertwine. So on a whole, it's to cut costs and to manage expectations.
And if they're a smaller business and they don't necessarily have a CFO, might they do a fractional CFO arrangement where they just get the advice that they need on an as needed basis? Is that something that entrepreneurs might do to bridge the gap?
Yes. So great point. In general.
And do you do that?
And I do that. Yes. Thank you for that. Quiet shout out that we did not prepare. No, it's actually a very good point, and that is very important. So like I said, entrepreneurs, we end up doing everything, but sadly, we sometimes take on too much. And I could speak for myself in areas I've had a tax business in the past. And yes, I have a finance. I'm a CPA by trade. I know the finance world. And so my books were great in order, but I try taking on everything also with sales and this. And it's sometimes important to know where your expertise is. And that's why, as Alicia said, to whoever joined and didn't hear, I have a partner and we joined to combine our resources to be able to help people and focus on what we are great at. So an entrepreneur or an owner, focus on what you're great at and try to outsource it if you're not able to. So whether that's going to a fractional CFO like myself, but it doesn't have to be. If you find someone amazing, awesome. If you're able to hire a controller because you have that resource, also an amazing choice. But absolutely look for someone who can help you. As an accountant as well, I could say go to an accountant, but many accountants are great at focusing just on year end and taxes, not really going to be with you along the way. But if you have one, amazing. But yes, I
Right.
definitely recommend going for a fractional CFO because you take out the cost of a CFO while getting the expertise along the way that could really help you make those financial decisions and increase your profitability.
Right. There's like a strategic leadership level there that can be really helpful that while an accountant is helpful, they just don't have that strategic know-how. So thank
Right.
you for that amazing question and that fantastic rabbit hole. I'll let you get back to your
Awesome.
slides, Shlomo.
That was great. Yes. So the next type of budgeting I would love to discuss is the concept of incremental budgeting. I think this is also one that many people have heard of, maybe not in these. The biggest concept of incremental budgeting involves building on the previous period's budget, and all you're doing are making minor adjustments as needed. So the biggest assumption of this one, you assume that the existing budget I have is my good baseline, and I'm just doing slight budgets along the way. However, the downside is the limited flexibility. Because changes are typically minor and focused on specific areas, you can theoretically miss out on a lot of other potential aspects that are needed. It has a very short-term focus. And when I say short-term, you're talking about 1 to 3 months, which is great for certain businesses, for example, ones with stable and predictable environments. So for example, utilities. Utility companies have consistent demand patterns. So for them, incremental budgeting is really effective for managing the routine ongoing operations. And they know their expenses, those stay the same. Government agencies, not talking about the federal government, more on the local ones, government agencies who have relatively stable service demands might use incremental budgeting as well for ongoing programs because not a lot is changing. Now, there is the case study that I want to bring up is a coffee shop, actually. They use incremental budgeting. It provides stability because you know constantly what's going to happen. However, the downside is the potential of oversights in evolving market conditions, which leads to missed opportunities. Because you're not constantly looking at it, you can be missing a lot of market conditions and miss out on the potential of gaining market share. Now, for businesses implementing incremental budgeting, constantly review those assumptions. It's so easy to become outdated because all you're doing are minor tweaks, constantly review. And again, this is the second point that I'm probably going to repeat on multiple budgeting strategies. Review. Review is so important, especially with incremental budgeting.
Okay, and just to be clear, Shlomo, the difference between the zero-based budgeting and the incremental budgeting is the incremental budgeting has a foundation that it starts with, and you're just looking at the previous period and making small adjustments instead of doing an audit and starting from scratch. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, exactly. Zero-based budgeting, you are starting all over. Incremental, you are assuming that everything you have is gold, and I'm just going to slightly change it.
Great.
Okay, amazing. Activity-based budgeting. Activity-based budgeting is one of the more complex forms of budgeting, and I don't know where all of our guests tonight, what industry they're all in, and I hope to get to know all of them over time, but as of now, I don't know, but you'll notice this is going to be it's focused on activities and your cost drivers, which are, for those who don't know, the direct cause of a business expense. It aligns your resources with your business activities. So the goal of activity-based budgeting is to focus on understanding the cost implications of specific activities and to allocate your resources based on those anticipated costs associated with each activity, which, as you can see, is a very detailed analysis and gives you a granular understanding of how costs are distributed, knowing each cost driver, and to allocate the resources that goes for each function and each process. The benefits usually are in industries with complex operations, where understanding and managing the cost driver of each activity are crucial for effective resource allocation. Typically, because you're putting all this effort in and you're making an entire plan, it involves a much more strategic and long-term approach because it requires a thorough understanding of each activity and their cost implication. A common example is a manufacturing company. Manufacturers can use activity-based budgeting to allocate their resources based on the specific production activities and optimizing their costs and improving efficiency. A not really known one would be actually a consulting service. You wouldn't think it because it seems simple, but Many service industries may use this because they have so many different activities going on and they may not realize where their costs are coming from. So this is a really good way to understand the revenue and value they're given for each client and the costs associated with it. The case study that we're using is a wholesaler, which has used activity-based budgeting. However, while it enhanced resource allocation precision on it, the downside is it is one of the most complex types of budgeting, and the time involved in accurately mapping out everything could be astronomical. So when applying activity-based budgeting, identify the key activities that drive your costs. You should create a map of these activities to gain a clear understanding of your structure and where your adjustments can be made. This is a complex one. I would not recommend it for many smaller businesses. However, if done properly, this is a great one to really match all your costs with all your revenue.
You know, Shlomo, the emphasis on activity really reminds me of some manufacturing clients I've worked with and how they focus on lean. And it's all about just like the actions that are being taken by the different departments as opposed to like looking at cost of goods and like line items in a budget sheet. Would you say that those types of businesses would be well disposed to use this approach?
Yeah, so exactly. Lean definitely factors into this. For those who don't know, lean is a concept of really reading into a few different areas. One of the biggest factors of it is looking at everything from customer's perspective. Does my customer want this? If not, cut it out. And actually, just kind of a random anecdote, my dad works in clothing, and he always used to tell me, it doesn't matter if you like the product. If your customer doesn't like it, that's it. So exactly this idea, it's one of those aspects exactly of lean where you look into, is my customer going to be interested in me having this cost? If not, cut it out.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is the coffee bar is probably not high on the list.
Probably not.
Gotcha.
All right. Rolling budgets are actually one of the more exciting ones. To be honest, I love rolling budgets. It's a bit complex, but like all of them, this one is something that could be so beneficial for businesses. It's a continuously updated budget for a specific future period, which allows businesses to adapt to changing conditions. What does that mean? It's continuously updating throughout the year. It's usually a fixed period. It could be 12 months, which is the most common one. But the difference is every month you're adding in the new budget. So you're constantly looking at a rolling 12 months. And each month you have to reevaluate that budget, but you're also looking at it over the year. Because of that, it's dynamic. It allows for adjustment, changes, which helps in response to evolving circumstances and business conditions. It has, because you're looking at the entire year, a medium and long-term focus, because the idea is you're constantly looking at the year as a whole. Okay, where are we going with this? Let's adapt. Let's continue focusing on it. It provides a balance, but because I'm changing every month, you have that short-term stability, but you're adapting long-term, which is an amazing thing. The industries that benefit most that I've seen from this are the technology industry. Tech companies are constantly having to adapt to the dynamic market conditions, innovation cycles. You see it now with artificial intelligence, that once one person broke into it, all of a sudden everyone's involved. So you're really seeing this type of market conditions. Fashion industry is another one. The fashion retailers may use this because consumer preference is constantly changing. Seasonal trends are constantly changing. So it's always good to stay with the trend, stay with your budget, and understand how you're going to adapt. The case study actually I have from here was a tech company because that's where I see it the most often. They implemented rolling budgets. It provides flexibility. However, the downside is the need for constant attention, which could potentially divert focus from long-term strategic planning. Again, I'm going to say it is a need for constant attention. If you are not updating this monthly, then you are not doing rolling budgets. And that is fine. Then this may not be for you. When using the rolling budgets, you have to have a frequent review schedule, which ensures your budget will remain responsive to changes in the business environment, which will help you stay agile and adaptable, but constantly review that.
Gosh, you know, compared to the previous ones we just talked about, Shlomo, this one seems so adaptable to those who are like a moving target.
Yeah.
I could see entrepreneurs, startups, especially tech, and even smaller like Charlie, you're an independent filmmaker. in addition to working with Jay Galt, but just your 2019 film just goes in the graveyard. That just aired in October, right? I'm sorry that I missed that. I was really looking forward to it, but I'll have to rent it from you. And actually, I don't have you used this in your new film that just came out, Rub? That was August, right? Does rolling budget sound like it's something that you use in your films?
I mean, in film, film budgeting is like one of the words we use more than anything. It's like a key word. As soon as you're starting with the film, you really, depending on what kind of film, where you are in your filmmaking, where you the kind of where your target is, we actually pick scripts based on budget. Like if we, you want to pick a sci-fi script, you better make sure you have at least $6 million, probably, and I probably 100 or $200 million. So, we're picking scripts or we're writing scripts that are, that we can fit into a certain budget range. And I've done everything from a $50,000 film to $6 million film, and that's small potatoes, really. But so we've got a budget, and we rely on every film really should have an accountant on staff, and we brought in CFO. I rely on accountants and people like Shlomo for this type of expert advice. Even though we are finance people, it's really important that you have somebody who can help you plan and help you, maximize it. The costs are going to be well worth it. So, and most films will have an accountant on staff. And we have a budget for our company. So there's a budget for the company, which is probably, I'm not sure what we use. Probably, I'm thinking incremental, but I'm not sure. But for the films, it's really almost like zero-based budgeting. And these are new terms for me, really, but it's probably zero-based budgeting in the sense that every film you're starting from scratch, but it's also probably flexible because, not only, can so many things go wrong while you're making the film and things change. Or just for example, in Ghost in the Graveyard, the one you mentioned, that is, by the way, you can watch free on Tubi and Amazon. It's, we had our budget, and we ended up attracting some talent. So we ended up getting Kelly Berglund and Jake Busey and some people that cost some money, and you have to fly them in first class. You have to put them in nicer hotels. You can't just, they're SAG actors, so you can't just be like, yeah, hang out, here's a hot dog truck. Like, we had to get in, better catering, and we had to have like the vans with the luxury, place to keep them warm. And we were filming in the winter. So the point is, our budget was, X dollars, and it tripled once we kind of stepped up and became a SAG film with, SAG actors and name people. So
Oh my
you
gosh.
really, budgeting is key thing when you're making a film. And that's, someone like Shlomo or whoever you're working, it's really important that you have a plan, but that you're flexible too. And you go with something that, is going to work for you, and you have expert advice. What do we do in this situation?
Awesome.
Well, Charlie, if you want to get me involved in your next film industry, I might give you a cut for, a cheaper rate if you get me involved in that movie.
Done.
All right. Amazing. Wow. Okay, now that I have a potential new career path, let's continue. All right.
I'll just say one, like, someone once asked me at a film festival, what's the best way for me to break into films? Like, I want to make films. What's the best way? I said the two best ways are to get a legal degree or get a CPA. I said, because every film needs a lawyer and needs contracts, and every film needs an accountant. So if you do that, you can become a producer on a small project. You just go to them and say, hey, I'll do this for free for your first one. Shlomo, for your first one, hey, I'll do this for free. No, I'm just kidding. And and then you get in, and then the next one, hey, yes, I was an accountant on this film. And then you get another one, and then you learn the business, and you become, next thing you know, you're producing films. So that's the quickest, easiest way to get in.
All right, good to know. Now, for anyone out there who's looking into the film industry, hit up Charles after. All right, incredible. Okay, I'm gonna go through the final budgeting type that we're gonna talk about tonight, and this one may not apply to most regular businesses, and I think you'll see as we go along what type they go. But if you're in this industry, it's important to know it. So, flexible budgets. Flexible budgets are designed to adapt to changes in your activity levels, which will provide you a realistic financial expectation based on the varying conditions. It's very activity driven, which it goes based on how much activity is happening. And you're going to adjust the revenues and expenses based on actual performance. It is a variable flexibility because it's constantly changing. It will give you hopefully a more realistic financial expectation. And it's commonly used in industries where variations in production or services significantly impact costs, which are seasonal or service-oriented business. Now, well, we'll go through and you'll see that point. The short to medium focus, typically shorter planning. Good examples of these are the hospitality industry. Hotels, restaurants can employ flexible budgets to adjust their expenditures based on occupancy rate, seasonal variations. Agriculture, farms can use it to adapt to changing crop yields, market prices. My personal favorite, which is not on this, ski resorts. Ski resorts know exactly what they have to adapt to, right? You know where you're having your big expenses and you know where you're having your big income. It can be used in other scenarios. So a case study I actually found, which was interesting, was a retail store used it. It maintained profitability during the variable sales. However, it had to constantly monitor and adjust. It required a lot of resources. I personally would not recommend them to use this in the retail space. I would actually go much more on the dynamic one than flexible for them, because they were focused too much on an area that this is actually a great example where budgets, if done improperly, can waste a lot of your time. So it's important to really feel free to try a few, do hybrids, that's fine, but don't be afraid to keep on changing them. So when crafting a flexible budget, set up the clear triggers for adjustment. What's going to change? Do I have to hire additional staff for my ski resort? Define the specific conditions under which your budget should flex, allowing your business to respond swiftly to the changes in circumstance.
Gosh, it sounds like those triggers are the whole thing that causes it to flex. Do you have maybe some examples of a trigger?
So triggers for that, let's just use, I know I'm staying on this and I haven't prepared, but I'm kind of passionate about the ski. So just gonna go in on that one. What's interesting about, let's say, a ski resort, for example, now I'm based in New York. Right now, there's really not a lot of snow, and those type of people are having to adjust their budget and realize, okay, we have to push off our season. So does that mean we push off our staff now? What about rental? Can we do something else in the meantime? So that's something they can't control. It's the weather, and they're having to adjust and go based on that. So for them, this is a great thing because you want to push off the cost as long as possible, because you don't have any income coming in. But like I said, for a regular business, where even if you're not a constant level, and even if you have changes like seasonal things like that, I would be wary of using it in a production or inventory style business.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's so flexible that it accommodates both like predictable fluctuations and also unpredictable, like the seasonality of the holidays or the weather.
Yeah, exactly. It can be all over the map, which is why it's such a scary one, because it really requires that, like, being on top all the time. I would personally recommend to people doing this. If you have a CFO, he's got to be on top of it. If you're using a fractional CFO for this, this is the type of thing you want to meet with your fractional CFO twice a month to discuss this, sometimes even more in seasons like now, let's say, for my ski resort, let's call it. You want to meet almost weekly to really go through this, because it's important to really stay ahead and to constantly decide, okay, where am I going based on this? Okay, choosing the right budget for your business. Choosing the right budget involves considering factors like industry dynamics, business life cycle, and risk tolerance. Now, consider your business's risk tolerance, and consider what your industry is like. If your industry is known for volatility, maybe a more flexible budgeting approach could work for you. Now, it's interesting, and Alicia, I think we spoke about this a bit before the meeting, where it's not just knowing the industry, it's also your personal risk tolerance. Your industry could say go risky on it, but you have to be honest with yourself. If you are going to be a nervous wreck and not be able to do your job, don't do it. Stay on know the industry and know yourself, which is knowing your business. That is what's important. Stay true to yourself on this one.
One of the things I love too about having Charlie here is budgets are one thing, but sometimes entrepreneurs, their growth goals exceed where they're at currently with their budget. And so when you have someone that builds business credit, your budget doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the story, because right, business credit is a way to like tackle your ambitions sooner rather than later. Charlie, do you want to touch a little bit on like business credit and budgeting and like how those two can push and pull each
Yeah.
other?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of startups even that, and we try to encourage them to budget part of their raise to start building business credit. so that so 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, 1 year down the road, they can, grow their business, scale their business using business credit, and not bringing in more investors, or not tapping the original investors for money. And we were talking about recently, we were talking about, I was involved in a restaurant, for example, in New York, many years ago. I was an investor. I wasn't an active participant, although I had their ears certainly. And we were around for a few years and did pretty good. It was, but every year we kind of were doing it not on a shoestring budget, because you can't, there's no such thing as a shoestring budget in New York City. It was the Lower East Side. I think our rent was $30,000 or $40,000 a month, if I remember correctly, which is cheap. So I imagine what it is now, but we were kind of shoestringing it, and we had some good funds, but not really what we wanted to do. And every year they kept coming back to the investors for, tapping us for a little bit more money. And after a few years, we got, fed up. We kind of, or some of the participants decided they weren't going to do it, and the whole thing kind of fell apart. We lost all the additional money we put into it. The point being, one, budgeting correctly from the beginning and kind of having a plan, but also if you're building business credit from day one, you wouldn't have to tap more money. You could just tap that credit line instead, and it becomes the business's money that's going back into it, not coming out of your pocket personally. So all these things go hand in hand. Having that fundability, having that, that foundation, making a budget and a plan, but with business credit enables you to keep scaling and growing and implementing that plan that you make with your CFO or whatever the case may be.
And so to be clear, that restaurant was like before you even got into business credit. It didn't even occur to you guys to do that, right?
Yeah, it didn't really even exist in the form that exists with Jay Galt. I mean, Jay Galt's been around for about 4 years now, but having a one place to go, and like I said, I've been in several, been in a few small businesses, and we've done everything either through investing or bootstrapping our own money, borrowing against, your home equity or your 401k or whatever. And that's how most entrepreneurs are doing it. They're using their own funds, they're co-signing, they're using personal guarantees. They don't have to. There is another way, and we'll probably talk more about that stuff in a future seminar. But it's important. It's a key component to having a successful business and making it last and not having it fall apart on you. Having that budget in place, but also being able to have those dreams and be able to fund it. There are ways that people aren't aware of.
Awesome.
Incredible. Okay. We're going to do one last case study because I know how interesting they can be to see people in real life. Now, I wish I can go into the real company name, and maybe in the future one I'll ask a company if they'll allow, but the concept is there. This was a service-based business that they actually did a hybrid. They used incremental budgeting. So they constantly kept on looking at use this historical one, but they also use activity-based budgeting for precise resource allocation. Now, they started out with activity-based budgeting, and then they started doing incremental. And the only reason it worked for them, and they actually had an increase in overall efficiency by 30%. It was pretty incredible. But it only worked because they set up smart reviews. They kept on reviewing it with their team, and they had each team member, they actually split it up by team and asked each team to come up with ways of cutting costs. And it was really interesting because they empowered each department to work on their own. It worked very well for them. It could work for everyone, but it's essential to assess your business's unique needs and experiment with combinations. There's no one combination for everyone. So you have your goals, you have your structure. Feel free to mess around with 3 of them if that works for you. However it goes, that's amazing. And just a slight tip, feel free to explore how businesses similar to yours apply their budgeting techniques. Ask your friends who are in similar businesses, what do they do? And feel free to take lessons from them that align with your objectives and adapt their strategies to fit your situation.
And Shlomo, are there particular types of budgets that you present, of the options you presented today? Are there certain that tend to go together, or ones that it's easier to transition from this one to that one, versus ones that are very different? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the ones that go really well together are activity-based budgeting, zero-based budgeting, and incremental. So to explain that, it's either activity-based budgeting and incremental, or zero-based budgeting and incremental, because both of those, you're really starting on that ground up, doing a lot of time-intensive work. But because if you do it properly, the incremental review, depending obviously on your industry, can really work well together to constantly just that slight review cycle. I personally am a huge fan of the rolling one, but the rolling one is, again, I wouldn't combine that with an activity-based one as much because it's constantly changing. The flexible budget, really, like I said, I'm not the huge fan of it personally, and I know I shouldn't say that. I should say I love them all, but I'm not a huge fan of the flexible one because I find it very unique that it's only certain types of businesses, but for those it's incredible. But those, I would use a lot of them with activity-based budgeting. I think activity-based budgeting to start, or even zero-based, but zero-based is sometimes too time intensive. Activity-based I find to be incredible to use it with incremental or to even switch it to rolling. Now, I may actually say this later as well, but it's an important point once we're saying it. In general, when you're switching if you're ever switching budgets, and feel free to switch during the year. There's no reason to stay on it. In general, it's smart to keep one for the year, but if it's not working for you, switch. But the biggest thing is constantly talk to your team so they know what's happening and constantly review your assumptions. And you'll realize if it works for you.
It's really interesting how the rolling budget kind of has no beginning and end.
Yeah.
Which I can see being really dangerous and also really powerful, because when you have the idea of Q1, 2, 3, and 4, there's like this finality. There's like oh, we're going to hang on until the end of the year and then we're going to start fresh and just like wash our hands of it. Whereas if you're rolling, you're just constantly learning and improving, but it must be challenging to set strategic goals and like to have like a finite period if you're always doing that. Can you talk a little bit about the push and pull of that?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I feel rolling budgets is really if you're feeling that fast pace. If you are a fast paced entrepreneur, you're in that industry, rolling budgets for you. But like you said, rolling budgets could be also very tiresome on the mind because it's a never ending cycle. You're constantly looking at 12 months ahead and you're constantly looking at this month. It's so time intensive and it so feels that it's never ending. So for many entrepreneurs who live their life that way, it's great. But for many of us who are in a much more stable, not even just stable, in a different type of career, like let's say myself, while I have up months, down months in the sense of what matters, right? Sometimes it's busy season, sometimes it's peak, and sometimes it's much quieter. At the end of the day, rolling is not for me because, like you said, I like the Q1 ending. Now, personally, I'm not so much of the incremental budgeting. I actually like to do a zero-based budgeting every year in the beginning of the year. And then during the year, I like to do incremental as I go. But it's a big thing to constantly review with my team, to constantly ask, okay, where are we at? What are your thoughts on this? Okay, should we spend money here? You like the advertising department, the sales department wants something? No problem. Let's see if we can work something out. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important like that. And yeah, like I said, rolling based budgeting is a lifestyle. And I guess, if you're in that New York environment where it's nonstop, it could work very well for you.
That's fascinating. I could see that like the maturity of a business or an enterprise, or as you go from startup to entrepreneur to becoming a more established business, that your approaches might change because incremental assumes that you have data in the first place, right?
Yeah.
I imagine that maybe when you start, activity-based budgeting might be the way to go because you're just learning what needs to be done to even have your business function. Do you find that there's like a maturity thing that businesses go through that in any
So
way?
really interesting question. I actually find activity-based budgeting is harder to start with in many areas because you don't always know your cost drivers. You're not really sure what's going to
Right.
cost you. And sadly, those first 6 months, you start noticing a lot of new expenses. I recommend in general to start out with zero-based budgeting. I think it's a really smart one to start with. However,
Okay.
for new businesses, I'm a big believer in meeting at the 6 month mark, decide if that works for you. Sometimes sooner. If you have that quick growth, amazing. But I don't find that the first usually 6 months of people's work, they have a real idea of the activity-based budgeting that works best for them. But after 6 months, I would switch over. I think that's an incredible one. And it really aligns everything. And you're very clear after that where your money's going. And okay, I can make this money, but the cost associated with it, is it worth it or not? And I think that's a really
Hmm.
good way of aligning everything.
That's interesting. And are some of these better suited to smaller versus larger teams? Like, say, a solopreneur, maybe someone, a consultant like myself,
Mhm.
or versus someone who has a larger team?
So, yeah, I would say in a certain sense, activity-based one may be more useful to teams in the sense of because you have so many departments, you may not always know what each cost driver is. And I think each department knows themselves
Mm.
best. Whereas a solopreneur, it could be very useful to zero-based budgeting won't require as much work. And incremental budgeting could help a lot, especially if you're on top of your own game and are willing to constantly review. So I would actually try to combine those two because I think those will really help. The rolling one is risky. Like I said, that one you really have to be willing to commit to those sit down times. It could be even every 2 weeks, depending on the industry.
Wow.
So to implement, let's just do a few quick tips. It requires careful planning, collaboration, and adherence to certain principles. Communication, like I said before, is key during every budget implementation. And by the way, for solopreneurs, I recommend writing it down. I'm a big believer in writing down my thoughts because it helps really straighten things. And it also kind of holds me accountable. I wrote this, I have to go for it. So if you're working with a team, or even if you're working by yourself, write it down and communicate the goals, the expectations, and associated with the chosen budgeting type to whoever you're working with. If it's your husband, your spouse, whoever, your team members, your CFO, your fractional CFO. People ask, what's the point? I've had people ask me, why should I? I'm not going to keep to the budget. I said, I will hold you accountable. I can't force you, but you're going to have to explain to me why you didn't keep to it. And saying I didn't want to is not a good answer. So at the end of the day, the goal is to constantly keep on growing, and a smart budget can help you do that. So I actually took the liberty of writing up a few common questions that I've gotten in the past about this. And obviously, Alicia, if you have other ones that people send to the chats, I'm more than happy to go through those as well. But just a few points. And some of these we actually kind of covered. How do businesses transition well from the current budgeting method to, let's say, rolling budget without disruptions? So there is no one that perfect way of doing it, but in general, a phased approach. Clear communication plan, write it down, involve the key stakeholders, whether those are your managers, your CFO, your controller, your spouse, whoever it is, involve them. Slowly implement it, review regularly, and constantly have people give you feedback. That will help at least a bit with the disruptions and hopefully ensure a smooth transition. And the second question I get very often is, what key performance indicators or metrics should a business track to measure the success of their budgeting type over time? How do I know that it works for me? I tried zero-based budgeting. How do I know this is working for me? So obviously depends on the approach. The common metrics include a budget variance, which is also known as a budget versus actual report. This is my budget. This is my actual. Am I keeping to it? If I'm not, maybe this budget wasn't for me. The return on investment, again, this could be department-based or business-based. And does this align with my strategic goals? I'm going to give a few resources, tools that I found useful during my career. And I would say QuickBooks and Xero are both amazing tools for keeping track of your income, your expenses. They give you reports. Now, some of those reports aren't always easy to read, so I would recommend Coursera or an Investopedia. Both of those have courses, have articles that can help you understand a bit more about budgeting. And finally, a CFO, controller, fractional CFO, whatever works in your life, depending on your budget, depending on your needs, I would definitely recommend having someone in your corner who's only looking out for your best interest and understands how the data helps you make money. So I would say explore those resources and articles, choose a budget that works best for you, which can be really valuable in streamlining it. And then I would just want to summarize the key takeaways and ask people to do a specific action at the end. So just to summarize, budgets are strategic roadmaps. They're great for allocating resources, planning for the future, navigating uncertainties. And like I also said, they'll have people who will hold you accountable, can actually help you with your peace of mind as well. We explored a few budgeting types with the potential of hybrid tailored to your specific business need. Hopefully you selected a budget approach that worked well for you, or you'll think about it considering your industry, your business, and your risk tolerance. I hope I provided some practical tips for how to implement them effectively. And a big thing, like I said, communication. keep that communication. And we went through a few resources and tools for continued learning, which I absolutely recommend. So I would ask, you don't have to share them if you don't want. Try to pick 3 actions you can take based on today. It could be revisiting the budget, exploring a new type and see if that works for you, or just talking to your team. See how that can help you. And thank you. If anyone has questions or if you want any guidance on implementing it, please feel free to reach out. Alicia, Charles, and myself, we run Entrepreneur Edge. And if any of you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And I'm going to cede the floor back to Alicia. And that is it for me tonight.
And one question for
Amazing,
great job, by
Shlomo.
the way, Shlomo. Amazing.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
One quick question from the field. A couple people are asking,
Yes.
they liked it so much. Is there any way we can get them a copy of the slides? And I know we're going to be posting this on YouTube at some point. So maybe we could attach it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it possible to attach it there, or should we just mail it out to the group? Whatever you think. But they are asking to get a look at it if it's possible.
Absolutely. So I think definitely we hopefully will be posting this on YouTube. And I think after that, if someone still wants to see it, they are more than welcome to reach out to us and we will hopefully pass on what we can.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, thank you so much, Shlomo and Charlie, and thank you for everybody who showed up tonight. We are on a mission to empower small business owners to set you up for success through insider tips and knowledge geared specifically for entrepreneurs. If you have an idea for a topic you'd like us to cover in the future, please hit us up and let us know. And if you had a question that we weren't able to cover tonight, don't be shy. I just dropped our email addresses in chat. We would love to hear from you. We are passionate about this and giving you the tools that you need to be an amazing entrepreneur. I'm Alicia Nagel, and we'll see you for the next Entrepreneur Edge.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Great night.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you are having an amazing day or an amazing evening, depending on whatever time you are watching this. As a follow-up to our last webinar, we discussed the various budgeting tips for your business. Many of you reached out with some amazing questions, and I wanted to see if I can address this in any way and try and help you guys make that amazing decision to start budgeting or revamp your budget and improve your profitability and growth for your business. So I've got this question a lot. How do I know which one works for me? What do I do? How can I implement this? Can I talk a bit more about hybrids? So I will try to cover a bit in this short video, but obviously if it doesn't, you are more than welcome to reach out to me and I will try to help you as much as I can. So in general, for a business that is, let's say, a small retail business or a business undergoing transformation, you can look into the concept of zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting will help you reassess, reallocate the expenses, and you may want to do that to align with the evolving consumer behavior and the market trends, or if your business is undergoing significant change or cost-cutting initiatives. I would recommend at that point zero-based budgeting because it is a precise tool that critically evaluates the expenses and helps you adapt to your new circumstances, your new situation. For a manufacturing or consulting business, explore the concept of activity-based budgeting. That focuses on your activities and cost drivers. That approach is so specific and it's beneficial for industries with complex operations because it gives you a detailed understanding of your cost implications. For someone in the tech or fashion industry, rolling budgets are the way to go. I have nothing bad to say about this budget. The only downside, well, I know that seems kind of against right away, but it's so dynamic, so amazing. The downside obviously is that you have to be on top of it, but all of them you really have to be on top of. This one though slightly more so. But this is one that's constantly changing, very flexible. If you're in a fast-moving industry, this is the one for you. If you're in a stable industry, a stable environment like a utility company, go for incremental budgeting. Incremental budgeting is slowly building on the previous year's budget. If you know what's going to be, this is the one for you. And then for those in industries with variable services or variable production, like agriculture, like hospitality, maybe consider flexible budgeting, as that's really adaptable for change in activity levels. Now, for those of you who asked about hybrid options, hybrids are amazing options. However, like many things, it could be a bit complicated to do. So, I would evaluate the potential of a hybrid option. One of them could be if you're using zero based budgeting and you don't want to constantly do that, combine it with incremental budgeting. Take that zero based budgeting where you reallocated everything and now incremental, you're slowly changing it. Now, many of them could work together, and the idea is to keep on trying. But I wish I could tell you all that there is one solution for your industry, but there isn't, sadly. You can look at others in your industry, but really it's trial and error. My recommendations would be talk to your CFO. Talk to him, meet with him, talk to your team, and try to reevaluate, okay, or make a decision. If you don't have a CFO, no problem. Consider going for a fractional CFO. They are a fraction of the cost, hence the name, and they can help you build those budgets. They can help you be on top of those budgets. Now, they won't be there with you every day, but they will meet with you 2, 3 times a month if need be and help you try different things and see what works for your industry. I would recommend that path. I think they are very cost efficient and they are incredible at helping you grow and increase profit. I myself am a fractional CFO and a CPA. You are more than welcome to reach out to me. If I can help you, I'm more than happy to try and put you in touch with someone who can. So I hope this has helped slightly. Obviously, if anyone has a question, you are more than welcome to reach out to me and I will try to help you as best as I can. That is all for now. Have a great night or a great day.